"Don't look at me, I'm disgusting," the beaten fat girl cried. But the mountain man called her beautiful. The winter night was moonless and cruel over Storm Ridge. Wind hissed through the pines, and snow whispered across the ground like ash. Beneath an ancient oak lay a broken body. Arabella Bella Crawford, 24 years old, her skin bruised, her breath shallow, her spirit almost gone. Hours earlier, she had been dragged out behind the Millbrook saloon where she worked. When she refused the drunken advances of 3 ranch hands, they beat her until she no longer screamed. Then they ripped her clothes away and left her for dead among the trees. "No one's going to miss the fat pig," one of them had spat before riding off into the dark. Now, half naked and bleeding, Bella tried to crawl, but her arms trembled and failed. Her tears froze against her cheeks. "Please, someone, help me." Her voice was a whisper swallowed by the storm. Miles away, a lone figure moved through the forest, his lantern slicing the night. Jasper Bear Thornfield, a 38-year-old mountain man who had long traded human company for silence, was out checking his traps. A former soldier haunted by the death of his wife and child, he preferred the company of wolves to men. Then he heard it, the faintest whimper. Following the sound, Jasper pushed through the brush and froze. A woman, beaten nearly senseless, lay in the snow. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees, covering her with his coat. "Hold on, sweetheart," he murmured. "You're not dying out here tonight." He lifted her into his arms, fragile, cold, and barely breathing, and started toward the distant glow of his cabin, each step carving salvation into the snow. Jasper burst through the cabin door, kicking it shut behind him. The storm howled outside, but inside, firelight danced across the log walls. He laid the unconscious woman gently on a cot near the hearth, his breath ragged from the climb. Her body was covered in bruises, dark purple across her ribs, a gash along her shoulder, blood crusted in her hair. For a moment, Jasper stood still, his heart pounding with both fury and sorrow. "Whoever did this," he muttered, "deserves a hole in the ground." He soaked a cloth in warm water and began cleaning the wounds, careful not to touch her more than needed. The fire crackled softly, filling the silence between them. Outside, the snow thickened. The world beyond the cabin disappeared. Hours later, as dawn broke gray over the mountains, the woman stirred. Her lips moved, whispering, Where am I?" Jasper leaned forward. "You're safe. You were hurt pretty bad. I found you in the woods." Her eyes fluttered open, blue like ice in sunlight, wide with panic. She pulled the blanket to her chest, trembling. Don't look at me." Jasper froze, taken aback. "Please," she sobbed, voice cracking. "I'm disgusting. I'm filthy. Just let me die." He turned his gaze toward the fire, speaking quietly. "You're not disgusting. You're hurt. That's all." Her tears fell harder. "They said no man would ever want me. They said I was nothing but fat and worthless." Jasper clenched his jaw. His voice, when he spoke again, carried a deep, quiet strength. "They lied." She looked at him then, really looked. He was enormous, broad as the doorframe, with shaggy brown hair and a beard streaked with gray. His eyes, though, were gentle, the kind that had seen too much pain to ever mock another's. He turned away to give her privacy. "There's stew on the stove. When you're ready, you'll eat. Then we'll talk." As he moved about the room, Bella pulled the blanket tighter, studying him. There was something unshakably kind about the way he handled every small thing, pouring water, feeding the fire, keeping his distance. Later that evening, after she'd eaten a few spoonfuls, she whispered, "Why did you help me?" Jasper didn't look up. "Because someone has to." "No one ever has before," she murmured. He met her gaze finally. "Then maybe it's time someone did." The word struck her like sunlight through clouds. For the first time in her memory, a man wasn't mocking her, using her, or turning away in disgust. He was simply there. Over the next few days, Jasper nursed her with quiet patience. He cleaned her wounds, brought her broth, and built a barrier curtain near her cot to protect her modesty. He never pried, never stared. When she woke from nightmares, he'd light another log and sit nearby until her breathing calmed. Once, she asked him softly, "Do you live here alone?" He nodded. "A long time now." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because I lost everything that mattered, my wife, my boy. After that, people stopped making sense." Bella's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." Jasper gave a small smile, one corner of his mouth lifting. "Don't be. You didn't cause it. But maybe—" His voice trailed off. "Maybe you'll help me remember what it's like not to be angry at the world." And that night, as she lay listening to the wind against the cabin walls, Bella realized something she hadn't felt in years. She was safe. Snow kept falling over Storm Ridge, coating the trees in white silence. Days turned into weeks, and Bella's strength slowly returned. Each morning, Jasper stoked the fire before dawn, cooked breakfast, and went to chop wood or check his traps. When she was well enough to stand, she insisted on helping. "You shouldn't be up yet," he said, frowning as she wobbled on her feet. "I can't just lie there while you do everything," Bella murmured, clutching the edge of the table. Jasper sighed, defeated. "All right, but if you faint, I'll carry you back to bed, and you won't win that argument twice." That made her laugh, the first true sound of joy to leave her lips since he'd found her. It startled him more than he'd ever admit. When the storm finally broke, Jasper decided she needed fresh air. He packed a small satchel with bread, jerky, and tea, and together they stepped out into the blinding sunlight. The world was dazzling. The pines shimmered beneath ice, the creek whispered beneath thin sheets of frost, and a hawk wheeled in the endless blue. Bella stopped often, gasping at how beautiful it all was. "I used to hate winter," she said softly. "Now it feels peaceful." Jasper nodded. "It's honest, at least. Winter doesn't pretend to be kind. You know what you're up against." As they walked, Bella told him pieces of her past. The long shifts at the saloon, the mocking laughter of drunken men, the loneliness of living in a world that only saw her size, not her heart. When she faltered, Jasper listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each word. "They thought hurting me made them strong," she whispered, "but all it did was make me wish I'd disappear." Jasper stopped, turning to her. "You didn't disappear," he said quietly. "You survived, and that takes more strength than those bastards will ever have." Their eyes met, and for a long moment neither looked away. The sun began to sink behind the ridge. They built a small fire near the creek and sat close for warmth. Jasper poured her tea, his hands careful, almost reverent. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked. "Once," he said. "But there's nothing for me down there, just graves and ghosts." Bella hesitated. "And what about me? Would you want me to go?" He stared into the flames. "I want you to heal, whatever that takes. She bit her lip, her voice trembling. "You've already healed more of me than you'll ever know." The fire crackled softly. He looked at her then, really looked, her face still bruised, but eyes bright, her body still fragile, but alive. There was no disgust in his gaze, only quiet admiration. When the wind picked up, Jasper handed her his coat. "Here," he said, "but you'll freeze." "I've been cold before," he replied, draping it over her shoulders. Bella smiled faintly, pulling it tighter. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Pretend you don't care when you do." He huffed, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Maybe, but you don't need to thank me." "I'm not thanking you," she said softly. "I'm just noticing." The walk back to the cabin was silent, but comfortable. When they reached the porch, Jasper opened the door and paused. "You're stronger than you think, Bella." She looked at him, her breath fogging in the cold air. "So are you, Jasper." That night, as she lay in her cot, Bella watched him across the firelight. He was sitting at his workbench, repairing a broken snare, his face calm for once. For the first time since the night she was left to die, she felt something that frightened and comforted her all at once. Hope. By late winter, the cabin had become more than a shelter. It had become a rhythm, the steady pulse of two wounded souls learning how to live again. Mornings began with the scent of coffee and the hiss of the fire. Jasper would haul in fresh logs while Bella prepared breakfast, sometimes clumsy, sometimes perfect, always earnest. Her hands had grown steadier, her face brighter. Each small task she learned made her stand a little taller. "You've got the fire too hot," Jasper said one morning, eyeing the pan. "I like it hot," she answered, defiant but smiling. He raised an eyebrow. "You'll burn the bread again." She crossed her arms. "Then you can cook tomorrow." He smirked. "You'd miss me if I did." Their laughter filled the cabin, echoing off the timber walls like a song neither of them had heard in years. When chores were done, they'd venture into the woods together. Jasper showed her how to track deer prints, how to identify safe mushrooms from poisonous ones, how to listen for storms hiding behind stillness. Bella soaked up every word, fascinated by how the wilderness seemed to bend around him, as if even the wind respected him. At night, the cabin glowed warm and alive. Bella would mend clothes or stir soup, while Jasper read aloud from an old journal of his wife's, a habit he'd never shared with anyone until now. "She wrote about everything," he said once, turning the worn pages. "The way the snow looked, the sound of my snoring, even how she hated the color of our curtains." Bella smiled softly. "She must have loved you a lot." He nodded, his voice thick. "She did, and I failed her. I wasn't there when the raiders came." Bella set her sewing down. "You can't blame yourself forever." He stared into the fire. "I've tried to tell myself that for years, but guilt, it's a stubborn kind of ghost." Bella hesitated, then reached across the table, touching his rough hand. "Then let's both start chasing ours away." Jasper's eyes lifted to hers, tired, vulnerable, but alive. For the first time, he didn't pull away. Days grew longer. Snow melted into streams. The forest awoke with color. Together, they built a small garden behind the cabin, planting potatoes and beans. When Jasper caught her humming one afternoon, he leaned against the doorframe, just watching. "What?" she asked, cheeks flushed. He shrugged. "Didn't know the mountain could sound that pretty." Bella rolled her eyes, hiding her smile. "You're impossible." "And you're trouble," he replied. but the good kind. As spring came, so did lightness. Bella began to laugh more freely, to walk with confidence, to look in the mirror without flinching. The bruises had faded, but deeper wounds were still healing. And Jasper, patient as ever, never forced what time hadn't finished. One evening, a heavy rain pinned them indoors. They sat by the fire drying herbs. The thunder rolled lazily outside. Bella watched the firelight dance across Jasper's face. "You know what I used to dream of," she said quietly. "Someone looking at me and not seeing shame or pity. Just me." Jasper met her gaze. "And what do you see when I look at you now?" Her breath caught. "Peace." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'm healing too." The fire crackled between them. Neither spoke for a long while. The storm raged, but inside, warmth settled deep into their bones, the kind that didn't fade with dawn. When Bella finally stood to put out the lamp, Jasper's hand brushed hers. It wasn't planned, just instinct. Two hands that had learned pain, recognizing something softer. "Good night, Jasper," she whispered. "Good night, Bella," he replied, his voice low and certain. That night, neither of them slept easily. Outside, the rain sang on the roof. Inside, something even more unstoppable was beginning to take root. Spring turned to early summer, and with it came the sound of life, rushing rivers, birdsong, and laughter echoing from the cabin at Storm Ridge. For the first time in years, Jasper found himself smiling without reason, and Bella, once afraid of her reflection, had begun to hum while she worked. But peace in the wilderness never lasted long. One afternoon, Jasper returned from a supply run to Millbrook, his jaw tight, his mood darker than the thunderclouds gathering over the ridge. He placed his rifle against the wall, poured himself a drink, and sat silently by the fire. Bella watched him, uneasy. What happened? He didn't look up. Town's talking. About what? About you. Her hands froze on the table. "They say the Crawford girl didn't die," Jasper continued, voice gravelly. "They say the mountain man who found her took her as payment for saving her life." Bella's breath hitched. They think I'm keeping you here against your will." He finally met her eyes. "And that you're too ashamed to go back." Tears welled in Bella's eyes, but anger rose with them. "Those men nearly killed me, Jasper, and now they want to pretend I'm the problem." He stood pacing the floor. "Rumors spread faster than truth. The sheriff says if you don't return to town and clear it up, they'll come looking." Bella shook her head fiercely. "I'm not going back there, not to those monsters." Jasper's gaze softened. "Then they'll come here." For a long moment, only the wind filled the silence between them. Later that night, as the fire burned low, Bella found Jasper outside, staring into the dark forest. "You shouldn't have gone to town alone," she said gently. "I had to," he muttered. "I wanted to believe things could change, that people might see past what they fear." She stepped closer. "You mean past you?" He gave a humorless laugh. "A soldier who kills to survive, a recluse who lives with ghosts, a man who drags home a beaten woman and doesn't let her go. They'll never believe I'm not the villain." "You're not a villain," she whispered. Jasper looked at her, then eyes raw. "You don't know what I've done, Bella." "Then tell me." He hesitated, then sighed deeply. "During the war, my unit raided a village we were told held enemy scouts. It was wrong information. There were families there, women, children." His voice cracked. "When I came back from that day, I stopped being a man anyone could love." Bella's heart broke at the pain in his voice. She touched his arm gently. "You made a mistake in a war you didn't start. But you spent every day since trying to save people. That matters more." He shook his head. "You'd forgive anyone, wouldn't you?" "Not anyone," she said softly. "Only those who deserve it, like you." Their eyes held, grief meeting compassion, guilt meeting grace. The next morning, Jasper saddled his horse. "If the sheriff comes, I'll lead him away. You stay inside, you hear me?" Bella stepped forward, determination hardening her voice. "No, if they come, I'll face them. I'm not that frightened girl anymore." He turned to her, his expression torn between pride and fear. "You don't owe them a damn thing." "I don't," she said, "but I owe myself the right to be heard." Jasper exhaled slowly. "Then I'll stand beside you." That evening, the valley went quiet. The sun dipped low, bleeding red across the peaks. Somewhere far below, the faint sound of hooves began to rise again, growing louder with every breath. Jasper loaded his rifle. Bella's hand trembled as she gripped his arm. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "we face it together." He nodded once, steady and unflinching. "Together." Dusk bled into darkness as the sound of horses thundered up the trail. Jasper stood on the porch, rifle slung across his arm, eyes fixed on the line of lanterns snaking toward the cabin. Behind him, Bella waited near the doorway, heart pounding so loud she could hardly breathe. 6 men rode into the clearing, Sheriff Porter, 2 deputies, and the same ranch hands who had beaten her months before. The leader smirked when he saw her silhouette in the cabin light. "Well, I'll be damned," he sneered. "The fat sow lives after all." Jasper stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "One more word like that, and you'll be tasting your teeth." The sheriff raised a hand. "Easy, Thornfield. We're just here to take the girl home." "She is home," Jasper growled. "She was taken," the sheriff replied. "Rumor says you kept her up here for yourself." Before Jasper could speak, Bella stepped outside. Her hand shook, but her voice cut through the cold air like a blade. "No one took me. I was left to die. Jasper saved my life when the rest of you wanted me dead." The sheriff frowned. "Miss Crawford." "Don't call me that," she snapped. "You all knew what they did to me. You watched them drag me out behind that saloon, and none of you stopped them. None of you cared because you thought I wasn't worth saving." The men shifted uneasily. The ranch hand who'd spoken earlier spat on the ground. "We should have finished the job." Jasper's rifle snapped up faster than breath. "Say that again." The man froze, eyes wide, staring down the barrel. The forest around them fell deathly still. "I said say it again," Jasper hissed. "Give me one reason to end this right now." No one moved. Even the sheriff stayed silent. Finally, Jasper lowered the gun. "You'll ride back down that trail and tell the town she's not their problem anymore? She's mine to protect now." The sheriff's jaw tightened, but the look in Jasper's eyes made arguing pointless. "You're playing with fire, Thornfield." "Then let it burn," Jasper said. They turned their horses and disappeared into the night, the sound of hooves fading into the distance. When the last echo was gone, Bella collapsed to her knees, shaking. Jasper dropped beside her, wrapping his arms around her trembling body. "They won't come back," he murmured, "not while I'm breathing." She looked up at him through tears. "You could have been killed." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You were worth the risk." The night fell quiet again. Only the crackle of fire from the cabin and the sound of two hearts that finally beat without fear. The next morning dawned soft and golden over Storm Ridge. Mist curled through the pines, and the cabin glowed in the first light of peace. For the first time in months, Bella slept without waking from nightmares. Jasper sat on the porch, carving a piece of wood into the shape of a tiny bird. When Bella stepped outside, wrapped in his old coat, he looked up and smiled. "They're gone," he said simply. "No one's coming back." She nodded, her voice quiet but sure. "Because you made them listen." He shook his head. "No, you did. You stood in front of them when I would have sent them running. You showed them you weren't afraid any more." She sat beside him, watching sunlight spill across the valley. "Maybe for the first time in my life I'm not." Jasper turned the small wooden bird in his hand, then placed it gently in hers. "For you?" he said. Bella traced its wings with her thumb. "It's beautiful." "It's freedom," he replied softly. "You've earned it." Her eyes shimmered. "And what about you? What will you do now?" He looked out toward the distant peaks. "I thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone, but then you showed up, bleeding, terrified, and stronger than anyone I've ever known. So maybe I'll start living again." She reached for his hand, fingers intertwining with his. "Then let's start together." The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying away the last ghosts of the past. Inside the cabin, the fire still burned, not from fear or anger anymore, but from warmth, healing, and love born out of darkness. Jasper smiled at her, his voice barely a whisper. "You're safe here, Bella. You always will be." Every scar tells a story of pain, survival, and the strength it takes to keep breathing when the world tries to break you. Bella once believed she was too broken, too ugly, too ruined to be loved. But on that mountain, she learned that kindness can rebuild what cruelty destroyed. Sometimes the person who calls you beautiful is the one who finally makes you believe it. Wherever you're listening from, tell me, do you still believe love can heal what life once shattered? Because the next story is for everyone who dares to say yes.